If you've ever wondered why arteries can quietly narrow over years without a single symptom, there's one food, something most people eat far more often than they realize, that plays a bigger role in that process than salt, more than red meat, and more than almost anything else people typically blame. It's not a food most people would ever suspect. It doesn't taste unhealthy. It's not sitting in a candy aisle with a warning label. In fact, it's often hiding inside foods that are marketed as completely ordinary, sometimes even marketed as a better choice. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this food is, why it does more damage to your arteries than most people realize, where it's hiding in your daily life without you noticing, and what you can realistically do about it starting today. Stay until the end, because I'll also show you 3 places this food hides that almost nobody checks, and one of them might surprise you completely. If this is useful, subscribe. This channel breaks down real, practical health information without the fear-mongering and without the fluff. Let's get into it. Before we reveal the food itself, it helps to understand what clogging an artery actually means, because the process is very different from how most people imagine it. Arteries don't clog the way a pipe clogs with debris floating downstream and getting stuck. Instead, the process starts at the inner lining of the artery wall, a thin layer called the endothelium. When that lining gets damaged, through inflammation, through oxidized particles circulating in the blood, through the ordinary wear of high blood pressure, your body responds the way it responds to any injury. It sends in repair material. In arteries, that repair material includes cholesterol-carrying particles, immune cells, and calcium, which combine over time to form what's called plaque. Here's the part that matters most for this video. Not all damage to that lining is equal. Some substances circulating in your blood are far more likely to trigger this repair and plaque cycle than others, because they arrive in a form your body recognizes as more threatening, more oxidized, more inflammatory, and that's exactly where today's food comes in. Not because of how much cholesterol it directly contains, but because of what it does to the particles already circulating in your bloodstream. It helps to think of it less like a single ingredient causing damage and more like a chain reaction. The food itself is really just the starting point. Once it's digested and absorbed, its real impact depends on how it interacts with everything already happening inside your blood vessels, how much inflammation is already present, how oxidized your existing cholesterol particles already are, and how much repair work your arteries are already doing in the background. This is exactly why 2 people can eat the same meal and have very different long-term outcomes. The food is one input among several, but for the substance we're discussing today, it happens to be an unusually strong one. So let's name it directly. The food we're talking about is repeatedly reheated and reused cooking oil. Most commonly, the oil used to fry foods multiple times before it's replaced, whether that's happening in a restaurant fryer, at a food stall, or even in your own kitchen when oil gets reused just one more time to save money or avoid waste. Here's why this specific food does more damage than people expect. When oil is heated once, briefly, for something like a quick stir fry, it undergoes relatively minor chemical changes. But when the same oil is heated to high temperatures repeatedly, used to fry one batch, cooled, then reheated to fry another, sometimes for days in commercial settings, it undergoes a chemical transformation. The fat molecules break down and reform into oxidized compounds and, in some cases, trans fats, even in oils that started out completely trans fat free. These oxidized compounds behave very differently in your body than fresh oil does. When you consume them, they contribute to oxidizing the LDL cholesterol particles already circulating in your bloodstream. And oxidized LDL is one of the specific triggers that causes your artery lining to view those particles as a threat, kicking off the inflammation and plaque cycle far more aggressively than non-oxidized LDL would. In other words, it's not just about how much fat you're eating, it's about the chemical state that fat is in by the time it reaches your bloodstream, and repeatedly reheated oil produces exactly the chemical state that does the most damage. To put it another way, think of LDL cholesterol as a delivery truck moving through your bloodstream. A normal unoxidized truck moves through fairly smoothly, dropping off cargo where it's needed, but an oxidized truck looks different to your immune system, damaged, suspicious, worth flagging. Immune cells in the artery wall grab hold of these oxidized trucks and pull them into the vessel lining, where they get stuck, accumulate, and slowly transform into the fatty streaks that eventually become plaque. Repeatedly reheated oil is one of the most efficient everyday ways to turn ordinary delivery trucks into the kind your immune system flags as suspicious. What makes this particularly sneaky is that the food doesn't need to be unhealthy tasting for this to happen. Fresh potatoes fried once in clean oil are a very different product chemically than the same potatoes fried in oil that's already been used a dozen times that day, even though they can taste almost identical, sometimes even better, since restaurants and food stalls often prefer reused oil because it produces a deeper flavor and color. Now let's talk about where this hides, because very few people actually check for it, and it shows up in more places than you'd expect. The first hiding place is restaurant and street food fried items. And this is the big one. Commercial fryers are expensive to refill constantly, so oil gets reused across many batches, sometimes for an entire day or longer. Especially at smaller restaurants and food stalls where cost matters more than frequent oil changes. This applies to fried chicken, French fries, samosas, pakoras, fried snacks of every kind. The oil doing the frying has often been through far more heating cycles than anything you do at home. There's no simple way to tell, just by looking at the final product, how many times the oil has been reused, which is exactly what makes this hiding place so difficult to avoid entirely. A freshly fried samosa at 11 a.m. and the same item fried at 8 p.m. from the same fryer can be chemically quite different, even though they look and taste almost identical to the customer. This is one of the main reasons fried food from the same restaurant can occasionally taste noticeably different depending on time of day. The oil itself has simply gone through more cycles by evening. The second hiding place is packaged and processed fried snacks, chips, crackers, and similar items that list vegetable oil as an ingredient without specifying which oil or how it was processed. Industrial frying for mass-produced snacks often involves oil used at high volume and high temperature for extended periods before replacement, which means the same oxidation process happens at scale, baked directly into a product that sits on a shelf for months afterward. What makes packaged snacks particularly tricky is that the oxidation happened during manufacturing, long before the product ever reached a store shelf, and there's no visible sign of it left by the time you're eating from the bag. Unlike restaurant food, where you might notice a slightly off smell or unusually dark color in poorly maintained frying oil, packaged snacks are formulated specifically to taste and look consistent regardless of how the oil behind them was actually treated during production. The third hiding place, and this is the one that surprises people the most, is reheated leftovers that were originally fried. Fried food that's been cooked once in fresh oil, then reheated at home in a pan or air fryer, undergoes a second round of heat exposure to the oil that's already soaked into the food itself. This isn't quite the same magnitude as commercial oil reuse, but it does mean that reheating fried leftovers, or something almost everyone does regularly, contributes a small amount of additional oxidized fat exposure that most people never think twice about. This one tends to surprise people because reheating leftovers generally feels like the responsible, budget-conscious choice, reducing food waste, saving money, avoiding an extra trip to buy fresh food. And in most other respects, it genuinely is a sensible habit. The point here isn't that you should throw away fried leftovers. It's simply that this particular category of food behaves a bit differently than, say, reheating a bowl of rice or a pot of dal, precisely because of the oil already absorbed into it. So what can you actually do about this? Let's go through practical, realistic steps, not extreme ones. First, when eating out, especially at smaller restaurants or food stalls that fry food constantly throughout the day, understand that you have limited control over how many times the oil has been reused, and treat frequent fried food from these sources as an occasional choice rather than a daily habit, particularly for anything fried later in the day when oil has already been through multiple rounds of use. If you're a regular at a particular restaurant or stall, timing can actually make a small difference. Food fried earlier in the day, closer to when oil was last changed, is generally a somewhat better bet than the same item fried late in the evening after the oil has already been through many cycles. Though obviously this isn't something you can verify with certainty, it's simply a reasonable rule of thumb. Second, at home, avoid reusing frying oil more than once or twice, and never reuse oil that's turned darker in color, developed a strong smell, or started to foam more than it did originally. All three are visible signs that the oil has already undergone significant chemical breakdown. If you fry food regularly at home, choosing oils that are more heat stable to begin with, like refined avocado oil or coconut oil, reduces how quickly this breakdown happens compared to oils that oxidize more easily under high heat. It's also worth mentioning that storage matters here too. Oil left out at room temperature, exposed to light and air between uses, degrades faster than oil that's properly cooled and stored in a sealed, opaque container. Small habits like straining out food particles after frying and storing oil away from direct light can meaningfully extend how many times it can be safely reused before the oxidation process accelerates. Third, when reading labels on packaged fried snacks, look for specifics about the oil used rather than a vague vegetable oil listing, and treat products that don't specify as more likely to have used a lower cost, more heavily reused oil source during manufacturing, simply because that tends to be the more economical choice for large-scale producers. Fourth, if you get regular blood work done, ask your doctor about checking both your LDL cholesterol and, if available, markers of oxidative stress or inflammation like CRP, rather than relying on total cholesterol alone. Two people can have similar total cholesterol numbers while having very different levels of the oxidized particles that actually drive artery damage, and standard basic panels don't always capture that difference clearly. This is a conversation worth having proactively rather than waiting until symptoms appear, precisely because artery damage from this process is genuinely silent for years. Bringing a specific, informed question to your next checkup, asking directly about oxidized LDL or inflammatory markers, rather than simply asking, "How's my cholesterol?" often leads to a more useful conversation and, in some cases, additional testing that a general checkup wouldn't have included otherwise. I want to pause here and be very clear about something, because it matters more than anything else in this video. This isn't about never eating fried food again, and it's not about panicking over a plate of fries at a restaurant. Occasional fried food from a source using reasonably fresh oil is not the same category of risk as daily consumption of food fried in oil that's been reused dozens of times. The goal here is awareness of frequency and source, not total elimination or fear. It's also worth remembering that your arteries respond to patterns over years, not to any single meal. One fried meal at a food stall isn't going to meaningfully change your cardiovascular health on its own. What matters is the cumulative pattern, how often this specific type of exposure happens across months and years, layered on top of everything else affecting your arteries, including blood pressure, blood sugar, physical activity, and overall diet quality. This is worth repeating because it's easy, after a video like this, to start feeling anxious every time you see a plate of fries. That's not the goal, and honestly, that kind of anxiety tends to be counterproductive. The goal is simply to shift fried food from invisible, unconsidered daily habit to an occasional choice you're making with some awareness of what's actually happening chemically. A small mental shift that over years adds up to a meaningfully different pattern of exposure without requiring constant vigilance or guilt over any single meal. If you've been watching our other videos on blood pressure and blood sugar, you'll notice a pattern forming across all three. It's rarely one dramatic thing that damages your cardiovascular system. It's small, repeated, everyday exposures, the order you eat your food, how well you sleep, and now how many times the oil frying your food has already been used, that add up quietly over time, long before anything shows up as a symptom you can feel. That connecting thread is really the whole point of this channel. Your body doesn't experience your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and your artery health as three separate systems running independently. They're deeply intertwined, influencing and amplifying each other over years. A habit that raises blood sugar repeatedly also tends to increase inflammation, which in turn makes arteries more reactive to oxidized particles like the ones we discussed today. None of these topics exist in isolation, which is exactly why understanding all three gives you a far more complete picture than focusing on just one. So here's your practical next step. This week, pay attention to how often fried food, whether from a restaurant, a food stall, or packaged snacks, shows up in your regular routine, not as an occasional treat, but as a repeated pattern. You don't need to eliminate it. You need an honest picture of the frequency, because that's the piece most people have never actually looked at directly. If you do get blood work done, bring up LDL particle quality and inflammation markers with your doctor specifically, rather than assuming a standard cholesterol panel tells the whole story. And if you cook at home, simply committing to using fresh oil rather than reusing it multiple times is one of the easiest, lowest effort changes available to you, requiring no new skills and very little extra cost. As always, nothing in this video is meant to replace an actual conversation with your doctor, especially if you already have known cardiovascular risk factors, elevated cholesterol, or a family history of heart disease. General patterns like the ones we've covered today apply broadly, but your specific risk, medications, and health history should always guide your own decisions, made together with a healthcare professional who knows your full picture. One final thought before we close. It's easy to hear something like this and feel like the modern food environment is working against you at every turn. And honestly, in some ways, that's a fair reaction. Reused frying oil is cheaper for businesses, and there's little incentive built into the system to change that on its own. But the good news is that awareness itself is powerful here. Once you know what to look for, and once you understand that frequency matters more than any single meal, you have real practical control over how much this specific exposure affects you without needing to give up foods you enjoy entirely. And if you take nothing else away from this video, take this. The goal was never to make fried food feel forbidden. It was to give you the same piece of information a curious doctor or nutrition researcher would want you to have, that not all fried food is chemically equal, that frequency and freshness of oil matter more than the fact that something was fried at all, and that a little awareness applied consistently over years tends to matter far more than perfect discipline applied for a single week and then abandoned. If this video helped you notice something about your own eating patterns you hadn't considered before, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Breaking down real health information in a way that's useful and actionable, not overwhelming. Subscribe if you want more videos like this one, connecting the everyday, easy-to-miss habits to the bigger picture of long-term health. And let me know in the comments, did you already know about reused frying oil? Or is this the first time you're hearing about it? I read every comment, and a lot of the topics we cover on this channel start directly from what you all share down there. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.